Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Volunteer Technologist podcast. Here we take a look at the different ways that people who are technically inclined volunteer outside of their primary job. Today I'm joined by Terrence Eden. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. And thank you very much for having me.
Oh, I appreciate you taking the time. I think I'd like to chat about your Open Benches project, but before we do, will you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hello, listeners. My name's Terrence Eden. I'm a technologist. I live in London in the United Kingdom, where it is currently very grey, overcast, and raining, as it always is in London.
That kind of matches my one experience with coming to London is gray and overcast. I can see
Hmm.
why that is the stereotype. So I stumbled across the fact that you have what sounded like a pretty interesting project you work on called Open Benches when I was actually looking at your profile on Mastodon and was just curious if you would maybe tell us a little more about that and what it is and kind of what it's all about.
Of course. So, openbenches.org is a project run by my wife Liz and me. And the crux of it is if you've ever been out for a walk in the UK and quite a few other parts of the world, you'll have seen a memorial bench. So a bench that you can sit down and there's a little plaque there which says in loving memory of Doris so and so who was born and died. And my wife and I go on quite a lot of walks and we keep seeing all these benches and we thought there must be a database of these somewhere. Someone's got this database. And we looked and it didn't exist. And I did some freedom of information requests to local councils saying, hey, can you give me a list of all your benches? And most councils went, yeah, no, we don't track them. Someone applies and we put a plaque and that's it. And I thought, well, why shouldn't I have a go at that? And so Liz and I built this website. It started off really simply: take a photo of a memorial bench. Your camera, if it's a camera phone, will probably GPS tag it, upload it to the site, and boom, it's there on a map. And we started this a few years ago, and it's got bigger and bigger and bigger. And we're currently sitting on just over 30,000 different benches from around the world, which is incredible. Just people randomly from all parts of the globe taking photos of memorial benches and uploading them. And that's it. That's the site.
That's it's pretty interesting. Like you, I've seen those benches all over, but I didn't realize that they would kinda set and forget that other than maybe the person who put the plaque in.
Yeah, some councils or local authorities seem really good at keeping on track of them, and others are a bit more laissez-faire, shall we say. And some of these benches get removed or destroyed or vandalized, and no one knows what was there, and then they just disappear. And I think it's a little sad for me. I think if you've ever been to a big city, you'll have seen those blue plaques on the
Mhm.
wall, which says, Jimi Hendrix was born here, or so and so invented something incredible here. And that's great if you're really famous, you do something worthwhile and world changing. And some people get Wikipedia pages, but for most of us, what do we get? There is very little tangible evidence of our impact on the world sometimes,
Yeah.
but it is so beautiful, I think, to wander somewhere beautiful and peaceful or picturesque and just see a little reminder that someone else was there and that person was loved, and maybe they did interesting things or had a great family or enjoyed walking their dogs, whatever it was. It's just a little piece of a sort of psychogeography or local history that says these were the people who were here and this is what they did, and now you're sitting in the same place they did. I think that's nice.
I agree, that is really cool. It's kinda fascinating to see what people choose to take the time to put on those benches sometimes
Yeah.
too.
Oh, yeah, and most of them are absolutely lovely, and it is in loving memory of whoever it was, and that's great. And some of them are incredibly sad. There's lots of ones for small children, and sometimes you see ones where there are two plaques, and it says in loving memory of so and so died 1974, and then later it says on the next plaque in loving memory of someone else reunited after 30 years, and it's just a little, I don't know, heartbreaking sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's and some of them are funny. There are plaques there are benches there for people's dogs and for cats, and there are benches for the unknown husband and for people who hated this park and everyone in it. But most of them are quite nice.
So what do you think the funniest bench you've seen is?
There are lots of really great ones and funny ones. My favorite is to Higgins Greenhall, 1986 to 2000, and the inscription reads, "We hadn't the heart to tell him he was a dog." I just love that.
Yeah.
There's also a bench that my wife spotted, which is um, for Tracy Emin, the famous artist, and it says it was on this bench that Tracy Emin gave up all of her artistic credibility and joined the Royal Academy. Which is okay, fair enough, Tracy.
Gee, I
Um,
wonder what the submitter of that one thought about the Royal Academy.
I wonder, yeah. But yeah, lots of them have little funny poems or inscriptions. And the nice thing is, so when we started the Open Benches website, people just uploaded and put the inscription on, and that was that. And over time, people have given me feedback on what things they would like there. So we've added a tagging system. So when you go onto it, you can search by tag, and one of the tags is funny, um, and you can see things like "in loving memory of a bench," not this bench, another one. um, and yeah, and then there you can look at tags for um, where they are, what sort of things they are. Um, and yeah, it's one of the things that I found really interesting doing this is this was just a project for me and my wife, and we opened it up and said, look, anyone can upload a photo. And as more and more people did, we got more and more feedback, and that led on to more technology choices as well. So the first bit of feedback we got was it's a pain to have to type in an inscription. I mean, most of them are short, but if you've taken photos of 20 benches, all of a sudden you're typing in 20 things, and ugh, that's a pain. So we looked into OCR, optical character recognition, and now when you upload a picture of a bench, it gets immediately scanned by Google Cloud Vision, and the text just comes out. And it's pretty damn accurate in lots of languages. So we've got benches where the script is Chinese or it's French or it's English, and Google Cloud Vision has been really good. I'm on a very cheap, I think possibly even the free tier, uh, and it works. We looked at I think Amazon Recognition and a few other ones, but at the time that was just the cheapest and easiest one to integrate.
That's pretty
Um,
amazing.
yeah, and it's the same with mapping as well. So we started off um, using. I'm trying to think if we used Google Maps to start with. I don't think so. We used OpenStreetMap, which is free, open source, which is brilliant. I should say all of the data that we create is free and open source. All the photos are Creative Commons. So if your listeners want to do something amazing with that data set, please be our guest. Respect the terms of the license, but go ahead. So yeah, we use OpenStreetMap, and there are a bunch of OpenStreetMap providers for different tiles. So we pay a small amount for that, but there are some free tiers which we can use, and yeah, that's nice. And all of our technology choices have been driven by the feedback people have given us as they're uploading things or using the data.
That's really cool. Do you know if either anyone else has or if y'all have looked at making making the, like, memorial benches something that would show up as either suggestions or easy to pull into any of the ancestry tracking sites? It's
Oh,
like,
that's
I'm thinking, like, I use Ancestry.com
hmm,
for a lot of stuff, and there's this other site called Find a Grave that
yeah.
is, I mean, at the heart of it, it's the same thing as open benches, but for gravestones.
Oh yeah,
And probably not
it's a
Creative
brilliant site.
Commons, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, really open and all user-generated data and all of that.
Hmm.
I was just thinking that it might be another cool data point. I was if I had
Absolutely. Well,
a ancestor or something and I was, pulling all the different interesting bits, because like,
hmm.
I'm using Ancestry as an example, but I think the other ones do this too. Like, one of the things they do is generate a timeline of interesting things that happened,
Oh
and
yeah, they do.
sometimes
Yeah.
it could be like, had a kid or
Hmm.
died or, brother was born or sister was born. but other things is like life events show up in there, and, things like, "Oh, well, somebody dedicated a bench to this person." That seems like it'd be a cool thing to see in there and just a neat piece of info.
Absolutely. So we have a, an API which people can use to search or pull in data. There's a search form on the Open Benches website, so people can just go in and type in the name of a relative. So there's nothing stopping sites like Ancestry, Find a Grave, anyone from pulling this data in. I think the thing that we found, we were talking with some people from OpenStreetMap
Mhm.
about whether this data could go in, because OpenStreetMap absolutely brilliant, and I'm sure most of your listeners will have used it. But there's all sorts of tools which allow you to add interesting things in your local area to a globally available, freely available map. The problem with some of our stuff is that it uses your phone's GPS. So it's not always brilliantly accurate. And if you're taking a photo of a bench, you're probably standing a few meters away from it.
Mhm.
We have signed an agreement with OpenStreetMap so they can use our data and pull it in. And I believe there's now a tag on benches on OpenStreetMap which has space for the inscription, so
That's
so
really cool.
people can pull them in. So yeah, I think it'd be brilliant if people were to use this. I guess the only small thing is if your relative is Jim Smith, then there's quite a few benches to Jim Smith. And
Yeah.
the nice thing is that lots of these do have dates of birth and dates of death. Some of them have where people lived. They're usually associated with the geography. It would be, I mean, I don't know of any. I don't know if someone who was born in the South Pole would put bench in the North Pole, but it's usually somewhere where they have been,
Right.
at least for a bit of time.
That's really cool. On the topic of open street maps, I'm actually not sure that a lot of my listeners would know about it because it's not quite as common in the US, I think, as it might
Hmm.
be in the UK. So would you kind of elaborate
Yeah.
on what OpenStreetMaps is a little?
So OpenStreetMap you can think of as Wikipedia for Google Maps. So rather than a mapping solution which is proprietary, which is what Google Maps is, and only Google can control it, this is the map that anyone can edit. And it has been absolutely fascinating watching it grow. So if you live in a fairly well-developed city or country, the map will be pretty good because there are lots of mapping sources which people can use. But you can go around and you can say, oh, you know what? The map says that this street is one way only, but actually it's not. They just rezoned that. Click, click, click. You've edited the map. It's now available for anyone. Where OpenStreetMap really shines, though, is in places which don't get as much attention. So if you are, live somewhere not very industrial or in a country which isn't well mapped or isn't very profitable for people like Google or Bing or whoever else, those maps often get overlooked. So local people on the ground, local volunteers can create their own maps of their country, and all of a sudden, those maps are available for routing vehicles or people or tourist reasons. It's absolutely fantastic. The app I'd recommend everyone gets is called Street Complete, and the only way I can describe it is like it's like Pokemon Go for mapping. So as you wander around your phone, you open up your phone and say, I am here. And it says, I've got a quest for you. Can you tell me, is this street lit? Yes or no? Click, click. And it's so simple. It will say, what? Oh, there's a post box on this corner. Is it still there? If it is, can you tell me what time post is collected? And it just pings you little quests as you're going about your day. And you can build up this map of knowledge for everyone to use. Oh, that's fantastic. I love it.
That sounds really cool. That app sounds like it would be one that could actually be a lot of fun too, because those little, I mean, gamification is a thing that so many
Well,
people love and works really well
I
to keep us
I
engaged.
I didn't believe that. I used to hate gamification completely, but one of my friends, Jenny, was uploading lots of photos to Open Benches and said, "Have I uploaded the most?" And I went into SQL and I did a query and I went, "Oh, you're only seventh." And she said, "Why isn't there a leaderboard?" And I went, "No one wants a leaderboard for benches." And she went, "Honestly, I want to know. This is motivating me. how far away am I from the top slot? And I went, fine, Jenny, I will create this for you. And so wrote a bit of code. There's now a leaderboard, and oh my god, people just went nuts for it. And I as soon as she could see that she wasn't the number one mapper, she upped her game and she did very well. She did become number one for a bit, and then someone else overtook her, and then other people. I had no idea that gamification was that powerful to people, but it's just fascinating watching people up their stats to the point where I made a small change to open benches a couple of years ago, and it changed the way stats counted. And I got lots of not angry emails, but emails saying, "I think you'll find that actually I have uploaded more benches than this." But I was like, "All right, fine, I'll change it back." So yeah, gamification is great, and with Street Complete, the app I was talking about, we visited New Zealand last year, and very briefly, I became the number one street completer in New Zealand because I was spending a lot of time wandering around, going, "Oh, I'll add a point of interest here. Oh, yes, I will say that there's a toilet at this rest stop or whatever it was." It's great fun.
That absolutely sounds like it. Just out of curiosity, did it help you find things you probably wouldn't have found otherwise while you were in New Zealand?
Oh, no.
Okay.
So I had OpenStreetMap as a mapping tool, so I could say, how do I get to this restaurant? How do I get to the train station? But for me, it was just a case of, as I was going to be walking down this street anyway, or I'm on the bus anyway. Opened it up and it would say, "Oh, there's speed bumps here, other this." So it just makes a journey
Yeah.
a bit more interesting and
No, that
interactive.
totally makes sense.
Yeah,
That's that is pretty neat.
yeah. Go download Street Complete right now. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
So, other than your open benches project, do you do any other volunteering of your technical knowledge? I've looked at, your blog and stuff, and it looks like you've got a pretty wide array of interests.
I blog far too much, so I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes. But my blog is the thing is, I now have to say my blog's domain, and it's impossible to say. I bought this domain like 20 years ago or something like that, and I thought it'd be really cool, and it's just a pain to pronounce. But anyway, it's shkspr.mobi. That's shkspr.mobi. Or you can just search for Terrence Eden's blog, and I blog about all the interesting tech that I find. One of the new things that I've been doing is integrating my blog with the Fediverse, so Mastodon, ActivityPub, new social networks like that. So normally, if you want to visit someone's blog or website, you visit their site, or maybe you've got their RSS or Atom feed and you get it in your feed reader. That's great. But what if you could get someone's blog posts as posts in your social network, which you could then hit favorite or repost or even reply to? So WordPress now has this brilliant new plugin called the Activity Pub plugin. It's pretty simple to configure. I've helped out a little bit with it. And the idea is it turns your blog into its own social network. So now if you're on Mastodon, and soon if you're on Threads and other things like that, you can follow my blog as though it were a user in a social network. And when you hit reply from your social media app, it shows up as a comment on my blog.
That's
And
really cool.
it's, yeah, it just means that we get away from this idea of, oh, I need a Facebook page and I have to push content over to Facebook, and oh well, I also need something on Twitter, but Twitter only has this many characters, and this is all just, it's nonsense. Publish once and then syndicate outwards. I think that's the future, and that's why I've been helping out, as I say, a tiny bit with the Activity Pub plugin.
That sounds really neat. How have you found actually using it from the Fediverse side? And I asked because one of the things I heard on another podcast, but I haven't looked into myself, is that it only published, like, the full blog post as the message on Mastodon as
Yeah,
opposed to, like, a teaser, and that just made for more than you necessarily wanna read directly in your
absolutely.
social
Yeah.
feed. It's a wall of text sometimes as opposed to, like, "Here's something interesting about it," and click through to read the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it depends what you're writing about and who you think your audience are. So with the Activity Pub plugin, you can set it just to
Okay.
be here's the headline and the teaser, or here's just a link.
So it's your
What
choice as to how
it's
much gets
absolutely
pushed
your
out to
choice,
the
and
Fediverse.
I think that's the most important thing. Yeah, is that we're locked in this assumption that, oh well, I'm limited to 280 characters because
Mhm.
that's what Twitter gives me. Oh, I can only attach one image because that's all Facebook gives me. It's like, no, man, just do what is right for you. And if you're posting huge long walls of text and people don't want to read that, they can either collapse your posts or they can unsubscribe from you.
Mhm.
But it's about what you want rather than what you're being told is the right way to do things.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time today. Before we go, how would be a good way for people to find you on the internet or reach out if they had questions or just in general to look you up and maybe contact you?
I don't want people finding me.
Oh,
People, what?
man.
No. I'm usually Edent on most social networks. That's Edent. You can find all my contact details at edent.tel, edent.tel. That's got links to my Mastodon and my blog and my LinkedIn and some other cool social network that you've not heard of yet. So yeah, um, please feel free, drop me an email, send me a message on Mastodon. And if you are having a nice walk and you happen to spot a memorial bench, snap a geotagged photo of it with your phone and upload it to openbenches.org.
And I'll be sure and put links to all the things we talked about today in the show notes. So, right there in the podcast app, there should be a link to open benches and anything else that's of interest from this.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Before we go, I'd like to thank those of you who have boosted in support for the show. It is very much appreciated. This is a value for value podcast, which means I rely on listeners like yourself contributing back to fund it. As such, I'll never charge you to listen, but producing and hosting it does cost money. If you got value from this episode, I ask that you contribute by sending a boost through a modern podcast app like Fountain or Cast-O-Matic, or via the Support the Show link in the show notes that are visible in your podcast app. You can also find the show notes and transcripts at volunteertechnologist.com. If you would like to come on the show or know someone I should reach out to about being on the show, please send me a message via one of the links at the bottom of the show notes. Thanks for listening.